Today, we are breaking down all 32 first round picks and their grades. Let's hop right into this. We're doing this by division, starting out with the AFC North and my Pittsburgh Steelers. We selected Derek Harmon at number 21 overall. I think this is a very solid pick. It is a B minus. Yes, some people love it more than I do. He has a really good prototypical build. We need defensive interior. It makes sense. I thought there were better players on the board. I do think that Derek Harmon will end up being a success. If I didn't, I'd be giving it in the C's or the D's range. So I do think it's a solid pick. Underwhelming given the guys who I really wanted for us. But nonetheless, we will see in retrospect how damn good this is because players fall that we never expect. And that can end up leading to a lot of curiosity going forward for how we can end up being able to fix maybe areas where I think that we ended up not fixing. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens next. Eric DeCosta doing his thing. Pisses me off every time as a Steelers fan because I'm always like, why couldn't I go to the alternate universe where I was a Ravens fan where I continue getting great drafts every year? Of course, there's going to be the fan bases that end up saying, well, they haven't won anything, but at the same time, I still think that you guys are doing a fantastic job. Malachi Starks was the best player arguably on the board. And, it allows Kyle Hamilton to be near the offensive line or the line of scrimmage. So I think it's fantastic. So good job on y'all for being able to do that. Eric DeCosta does it again. Then we got the Bengals going Shamar Stewart. I ended up talking about this one in my last final mock draft. It fits what the organization looks for in offensive tackles. It just makes sense given, again, what you guys as an organization look for. You can't go into the year with Myles Murphy as your edge 2 as much as I love the guy. I do think Shamar Stewart's run defense gives him a high floor, and you do have the high ceiling there as well. I don't think it's as bad of a pick as some of the people who were disappointed, and I'm not a Shamar Stewart guy, so I still think this is quite the solid move. Then let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns ended up making a big move. And, we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth right now. Mason Graham on his own compared to Travis Hunter, extremely underwhelming. I still think he's going to end up being a solid player, but I do think this is a really good defensive interior class. There's a lot of players that I have a lot of confidence in down the board that could play a role similar to Mason Graham. I don't think you get the same bonus as Travis Hunter for the next decade. However, I'm not even going to criticize the fact that you moved down from Travis Hunter because you ended up doing it for a significant amount of draft capital. The reason I'm going to air quotes complain about it is because I don't think you still ended up making a franchise boosting move. I don't think Mason Graham's winning you any games. And that doesn't mean that you don't take Mason Graham. Of course, if you thought he was the best player available, by all means. I didn't think he was the best player available. And you ended up moving away from a player who I did think so. But the price of an early 2, and a next year 1, and of course, there's some other pieces in there as well. I understand why you did it. Now, part of me wanted it to be Shedeur and Trav once again. I do think that could have been a foundation for your franchise going forward. But again, it's not going to be bad for going after defensive interior 1, getting a free 1 and early 2, which is essentially another 1. I just think, again, C is adequate, and you guys did a solid job. It just the player himself, I was a little bit like, I think you still need to have a bona fide run defender. Then we got the Chicago Bears going after Colston Loveland. I gave this initially a lower grade, and I was like really disappointed in it because, I have Tyler Warren above Colston Loveland. I have Colston Loveland noticeably lower. But the more I sat on it, the more I felt how this would end up being utilized by Ben Johnson, the more comfortable I became with it. And maybe it still is a C. Maybe it's a C+. Maybe it's not the B-. I boosted it to a B- in the last moment. So in my notes, it's still a C+. But he's going to be used like Sam Laporta. That's a massive aspect of this offense. I don't think Cole Kmet is going to be able to match that type of production. And on top of that, Colston can play in the slot until Kmet has either no viability or Loveland is ready with his shoulder to be able to go back into being an inline and be more of an every down player. It is a little bit early, but I do think there is a drop off at tight end, especially for the type of tight end that the Bears should be looking for. I'd much rather the Bears have gone Colston Loveland and end up going after 2 really good players in the second at positions that maybe they would have tried to push a little bit earlier in the first, like maybe Michael Williams. So I do think this could end up working net positive. Again, we're going to be doing this every day and looking back in retrospect. Then we have the Green Bay Packers going after Matthew Golden. It's good to see them do it for the first time since 2002. Matt Golden's a really solid boundary perimeter threat who has great deep speed. I think he's going to do a fantastic job with Jordan Love, and I think it helps him out a ton. We'll see if this ends up coming to fruition as a great pick, because we haven't seen Matt Golden in the cold. He's been a Texas merchant. He went to Houston, went to high school in Houston, went to Austin, and then now he is all the way up in Green Bay. So hopefully, fingers crossed, he can end up surviving the cold. I think he will, and time will tell. Detroit Lions go Tyleik Williams. A lot of people got some people got their feathers ruffled because they didn't understand how awesome Tyleik Williams is. Tyleik Williams is just such a high floor player with so much untapped potential. The thing about the Lions is that with Ali McNeil's injury, I am a little bit terrified of what you guys are, supposed to do before you end up taking Tyleik Williams, where now I'm like, okay, the loss is not going to be remotely as impactful as what it was beforehand. Tyleik is a super high floor player. He can continue to develop as a pass rusher and provide even more value. He was my number 21 or 22 player on my board, so I am very happy that he ended up being the selection. The Minnesota Vikings ended up sticking and picking with Donovan Jackson. The pick itself was an overall B grade. I think the situation made it a C plus for me. And again, that's why we have to weigh what's going to happen. And right now I'm trying my best just to focus primarily on the picks, weigh a little bit of if there's a trade, I'll put that in there, but not if like, oh, I think you should trade back. Donovan Jackson's a damn good player. He was a top 32 player for me. He ended up showing that he could even play left tackle for you guys, but I do think his vision is to be that guard role. And if Darsaw ever gets hurt, he can play tackle. And that's awesome. That's a place that you should be. So, honestly, don't despair. A very good player. I would have traded back, especially knowing that the Giants were willing to give up that kind of package. I would have done that in a heartbeat, but it is what it is. Maybe they still wanted to stay in the first, and that was the goal. Then we had the Jacksonville Jaguars. Speaking of a trade, we talked about it there earlier with the Browns. And this is an A++++ pick for the Jaguars. It was my favorite destination, actually, for Travis Hunter. Did not feel remotely realistic. I almost ended up putting it in my dream mock draft for the Jacksonville Jaguars on my boy Football Analysis, Garrett's website. And I literally ended up putting there being like, well, Travis is kind of like my dream, but it just doesn't seem possible. You guys ended up forking over a lot of draft capital to make it happen. We'll see if that ends up, biting y'all in the ass. However, I will just say this. First off, you have a couple day 2 and quite a few day 3 picks. So it's not like you're not going to be able to bring in young, cheap talent. The thing is, Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas are going to be an elite duo. And that's going to be somebody like Travis Hunter is not a player you can get every single year. Like, it's just not. No matter how many times we'll say, like, oh, you can't get a Caleb Williams every year. And that's true. But I do think you can get one once every 3 to 5 years in terms of just like that level of talent coming out of college. We haven't seen something like Hunter. Like, this is truly somebody that you're being able to buy into a class of player that maybe isn't worth the price that you're paying, but it very well could be. And the chance of being able to get that, the research and development cost, we should call it, is worth it, in my opinion. Travis Hunter is going to be fantastic there for the Jaguars. We'll see if this draft ends up allowing them to get a couple more steals. The Colts end up getting the best player possible for them, Tyler Warren. It's like, in my final mock draft, I got pissed because I couldn't let a tight end fall to the Colts. And we'll see if they end up going after edge rusher or something early in the second round, or, continuing on into day 2, day 3. But Tyler Warren is a very good player. He's the best reliable option to be able to have for your quarterback in Anthony Richardson. I think this is fantastic. Colts fans, rejoice. Then we had the Texans, who did nothing. Actually, they did do something. They got an early second round pick and 2/3, one of which being next year. So they're loading up on a ton of future capital. I like what Nick Caserio is doing, and we'll see how he ends up addressing it on day 2. The Titans end up getting Cam Ward. I give it a B+ because I still think it's a really good pick. He's not my number 1 player on my board, so that's why I can't give it in the A's, but still a very, very good pick for, we've known this for months. So I don't want to waste too much of our time just lingering and pondering on that. Then we got the New Orleans Saints going Kelvin Banks. It's a solid pick, but the problem is I still think Tolley ended up proving they could play left tackle, and now you're kicking him back to right, which is not a bad thing. But I also don't think Kelvin Banks was a top 10 player on my board, so it wasn't something that I think disrupting the flow of the offense would have been necessarily worth it. I don't think it's a bad pick, though. It's a good pick. It's better than what my Steelers did with Derek Harmon. So if you really like Derek Harmon to the Steelers, then imagine that even better with Kelvin Banks. And again, offensive line, never a bad idea to upgrade it. I do think that the edge core is still pretty weak there. Michael Williams might have been a good spot for him, but I still think solid spot overall. Then we got the Buccaneers going Emeka Egbuka. Could have been a lot harsher on this, but I do think with the short tenure of why am I forgetting? I literally almost called him Drake London, Mike Evans. I do think that extra receiving capacity is going to be there in the future. And I just think this is a longer term move, which is weird. But I mean, Emeka Egbuka is the highest floor receiver in the class. It's a damn good player. It's hard to criticize it, but at the same time, I don't really think it improves this team's chance of winning a Super Bowl in any way, shape, or form over some of the other players that were there. So I do think you missed out in that regard. Hopefully it doesn't come back to bite you in the ass. Knock on wood. Now let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons, who went crazy. They got Jalen Walker as a faller at 15, and then they ended up forking over a next year first. They ended up getting a third rounder back from the Rams, I think pick 101. So at least there's a little bit there. But giving up your next year one, which I think, to be fair, you guys haven't done too well on day 2 so far. So I respect it. You guys didn't do too well last year, and you guys ended up sniping arguably the 2 best edges in the class, which Jalen Walker, I love him more as a linebacker. I do think you're going to be perfectly fine using him as a linebacker or as an edge rusher. And then James Pierce, with the personality concerns, I'm worried, but Jalen Walker's a good leader, so you don't really need James to be a leader. And James on the field is fantastic. He's the number 2 prospect in the class if he is mentally there. So I'm excited to see what this is going to bring because the Falcons haven't had pass rush in forever. The trade is expensive, but also pretty sure Fontenot won't be there next year if they don't fix that issue. So this is a do or die move, and they did it for arguably the best player in the class. So keep that in mind. It's just James Pierce has some relative concerns that have pushed him down the board, obviously. Then the Panthers go Tetairoa McMillan. It's an interesting pick. I think it's an upgrade. It's a good pick. It's nothing that blows my socks off, hence why I end up giving it a B. It can end up helping out Bryce Young. I love it. I respect it. In your own division, you have Drake London. I mean, you're just continuing to build a lot of height there with Coker as well as Liggett. So super excited for you guys in terms of that. You got a bunch of receiving types, and now you have yourself another one. Then at New England Patriots go Will Campbell at 4. Kind of seemed like the lock pick. I just don't really think Will Campbell is worth a number 4 overall pick. It's fine upgrading the offensive line. It's not a bad pick. To me, it's just not a good pick, which is why it's a C+, because bad picks are like C, C minus, and below. But let's continue on with this. I do think that we've kind of talked about that ad nauseum. The Jets end up making the right move for them. It's a great pick. He's like, even though I don't have Membu all that high, he was sitting there in my 30s, like early 30 range, late 20s. Membu, I still think was a great fit for the Jets. And after this, I will be doing a board that is based on the actual fit grade. And if you're in a perfect fit, I'll just boost your grade 10 points. If it's a great fit, 5. If it's a good fit, 3. Just like kind of boost it a little bit like that. And if it's like a bad fit, drop it a little bit. I digress though. Armand Membu is still a perfect fit here for the Jets, which would end up vaulting him into the top of the position there for them. So I'm excited to see Armand be able to pair up with Olu-Fashanu and finally complete that line. Dolphins end up going Kenneth Grant at 13. I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't think Kenneth Grant's ready day one. This is a long-term move for an organization that I don't think has the luxury of playing the long game. And Kenneth Grant will end up being able to be a boost for sure. But I do think it's a lot more development than what a number 13 overall pick entails. So I think in the long run, you'll end up looking back and saying, oh, Kenneth Grant was a really good pick. He's a really good player. But I do worry that the short term, maybe the first couple years, you're going to be like, I need this guy to break out, and I don't know if he will. The Bills end up going Max Hairston at number 30. I'm not the biggest Max Hairston guy. I think that this is a solid fit for him in terms of the scheme, but undersized. He has ball skills. He's fast, but I also do worry about him overall in terms of the health. He's going up to a much colder climate than Kentucky. I just have my concerns. I don't think he's necessarily the best player on the board. I liked Amos a noticeably lot better, and so I would have went after that route or Will Johnson, even with the injury concerns. Then we have the Washington Commanders going Josh Connerly. Josh Connerly's a good player. He was pretty damn high on my board. He's a top 15 player. I think the Commanders could use it, but I do worry about the vision for his role, whether he's going to play right tackle or right guard for the short run. I don't know. And obviously, there's some vision there. You're spending a first round pick on the kid, but I mean, I just do have my concerns as to whether Josh Connerly is going to be put in the right situation on this team. This is one of those spots where I say the fit may be okay to not great, and I would have loved for him to go maybe somewhere else, but the Commanders are still upgrading their offensive line. That's a good place to be, and it's great value. The Cowboys, speaking of, end up getting the same grade, which is kind of nuts because I actually have liked Guyton lower, and he ended up going higher in the first, and you might ask why. I think this is a perfect fit for him. And on top of that, the Cowboys just need to consistently hit because getting flash, getting luxury doesn't really matter if there's not cohesion. The best thing the Cowboys can do is continue to develop the offensive line. Give Dak more time, give the receivers more time, give the running back more protection. And I love that. And Tyler Booker's going to bring that. Do I have that as Tyler Guyton? That is so funny. Hold on. I'm gonna edit that. Now that it's actually to the right Tyler, along with Guyton, along with what was the other one? Smith. I'm hoping this is giving an opportunity for Guyton to move back to right tackle, Tyler Smith to move to left tackle, and Booker to move into left guard, with Hoffman being able to move into the other guard spot with BB at center. That's the vision there. That's the goal. If it doesn't come to that fruition, then we might end up having a bigger issue. Then we got the Philadelphia Eagles making a small move up for Jahad Campbell. I ended up saying this is the dream pick for Vic Fangio, saying he is going to be the Andrew Van Ginkel for him. And I think that's absolutely the case. He could be full-time off-ball linebacker. He could be full-time edge rusher, former #1 edge rusher in his class. This is a spectacular move, once again, by Howie, and I'm just glad he ended up making a small trade up. Apparently, there's rumors that you guys almost trade up to 22 to get him and had a deal in place, but didn't end up coming to fruition. You guys end up getting him at 31 instead. New York Giants ended up going after 2 players by trading up and back into the first. Went Abdul Carter at number 3. Ended up getting Kayvon Thibodeau's 5th-year extension as well, or 5th-year option, I should say, which is going to be a nasty edge core to have. And rotation's always key. It's good to give Abdul Carter a little bit of leeway to grow and develop. Jackson Dart, I'm not the biggest guy on Jackson Dart. You guys know me. I had him pretty much as like that round 3 to day 3 guy. I don't think that he's the answer, but this is the best system for him to go to. It's this and McVay. So if it's going to work, it's going to be here. I'm praying for you guys that it does. But if it doesn't, you still ended up with Abdul Carter. You didn't give up a future first. That is where you can kind of take a deep breath and go on with your day. Then we got the Niners going Mykel Williams. I think this is a fantastic move. Mykel, this is a perfect fit for him. I don't know if there's a better fit for him. You go to Robert Saleh, you get Nick Bosa as a mentor. It is hard to find a better spot for him to go. Maybe I would have loved a little bit of a move back, but that is just, that's just wishful thinking. It's a really damn good move. Then we got the Seattle Seahawks going Gray Zabel at pick number 18. A lot of fans are not going to love this one. My boy Johnny, shout out to you, but I know that he wasn't very happy with this at all. It's a damn good player. I mean, this is someone I think who has all-pro potential, and that's hard to say. I don't like throwing that phrase around, but this guy has it. He's a top 10 player on my board, and you guys needed offensive line desperately. The Rams ended up going and getting that big trade with the Atlanta Falcons, got a next year first as well. So very excited to see that the Rams did end up making a trade like I suggested, but they did it in the opposite direction. Rather than losing a first-round pick, they gained one. Then we got the Arizona Cardinals going Walter Nolan. I ended up having this in my final mock draft. I think it's a perfect fit. It's literally Milton Williams for Jonathan Gannon. You need defensive interior help. You need some juice there. You haven't had it. Now you do. That's why I'm a fan of it. It's a good move. Then we have the Chiefs, who moved back, got an extra pick, and ended up still getting Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons is fantastic. Really, really good player. When healthy, he is a top 5 player in the class. I would be given A++++, but I do not fully understand how his knee is doing. But I still think this gives him an opportunity to start at left tackle or even at left guard, and you're going to be perfectly fine. It also gives him time to recover if you don't want him to be rushed into it. Then for the Los Angeles Chargers, you take my king, Amarian Hampton, and breaks my heart because I want him to my Steelers, but Najee's not there for the long haul. Amarian's going to be a stud for you guys. And so I'm super happy for y'all to have that opportunity to get a player who I think can end up getting well over 1,000 yards, even as a rookie, especially behind that offensive line. Then we got another running back in the division, Ashton Genty, going to the Raiders. I had very comparable grades on both of these players. I think both of them went to great spots. Raiders, you're pretty much going to use him as your Marshawn Lynch. Huge fan of that. This is going to end up being a very good pick nonetheless. I do worry about your team not being fully ready on the defensive side for this, but if you guys end up somehow sniping Will Johnson on day 2, I am going to give this an A++ move because, well, it's a player who I wanted to get y'all at number 6, falling for medical reasons. Then we got the Denver Broncos. That ends off this episode, by the way, by going after Jahdae Barron. And Jade's a damn good player. I don't have him nearly as high as the consensus does, but you have him going into the slot. You have 2 really good corners. You're building a no-fly zone again. That's a good place to be. It's never a wrong thing to go after really good, talented corners. You didn't reach on him, especially compared to the consensus, and that's a good spot to be. So I'd be happy with this. A B- is just because I think Amari and Hampton could have helped more, but it's not a bad pick at all. And that's again, really good spot to be in. So that's going to be the draft. Thank you. That's not going to be the draft. We have 2 more days. You guys can join me for that tomorrow, as well as the day after that with Broshmo. But thank you for watching. That's the video. See you later.